Pastor Nhlapho cannot speak until you play this one.
Okay.
Nsima.
Oh, Jesus!
Who was the Calvary?
Yeah.
Oh, then you know who Pastor Nhlapho is. He loves that song. Every effort I've attended, he sings that song with passion. It means a lot to him and it means a lot to all of us. Yeah. Pastor Nhlapho, if we can just review the book. Those of you, us, we have not bought it, but we'd like to have a view of what does the book talk about. What made you write this book? I see you, it's not the first one. Maybe you can also give us a background of why you keep on writing. What made you start writing? Maybe we should start there.
Thank you, Brother Van. I want to take this time and greet everyone here. Amen. Thank you for coming. We're hoping for 50 people, just 50 people, to be here this evening. And I'm just so thankful that you could all make it. Well, this latest work that has just come out just 2 months or so ago came about as a result of frustration. Frustration. As one who loves research, as one who loves to interrogate what I would refer to as church growth trends, how the church grows, what are the challenges towards the growth of the church, what is referred to in the book as impediments of church growth, looking at those, but also looking at an index, a comparative membership index between the growth of the church in South Africa, in our union, the Southern African Union, and unions which are beyond the Limpopo River. Looking at those, what one could observe there was that our growth is very sluggish in this country. And I'm arguing in the book that South Africa is actually an unentered area, in spite of the fact that Adventism started in this country. And so I felt I needed to put some thoughts together and make some reflections on what could be the reasons why the cradle of Adventism has, by and large, died. But the offspring or the byproduct is doing well. Yeah. Zimbabwe, Zambia, there are statistics and so on. And so that is the reason why I felt I needed to put some of these thoughts together.
Yeah, it's a big concern that where the gospel came first, it's not growing there, it's growing in other parts. I always wonder, in as much as we were oppressed, the black people here, does it have an effect, or it's just because our economic situation is better, we've never seen tough times? I remember in places like Zambia and Zimbabwe, you find lots of schools, Adventist schools, from place to place. You find the same thing maybe in Zambia. They had also what they called Harvest 90. And I thought TMI, total member involvement, would also have an effect in South Africa. I don't see that. There are people like who are good at strategies, but I don't know whether they're good at implementing those strategies. So much that we have it on paper maybe, how the church must grow, but we've never lived what we've put on paper. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we don't not have lack or a shortage of ideas and strategies, frameworks as a church in South Africa. But we are very lean on implementation. We have resources, we are a very highly resourced country. In fact, our union is a major contributor of trust funds to this division, more than any union in this division. But in spite of the fact that God has blessed this country with resources of a material nature, we are not able to translate, and you'll pick this up in one of the chapters there, that we are not able to translate the material wealth into spiritual wealth in this country. Now, you touched on whether or not countries that are under-resourced, like Zambia and others, could they perhaps be having a different spiritual ethos than us here? Well, that has an effect. We all know that socio-theologically, people that are underdeveloped materially, they tend to be closer to God than those who have been resourced. Yeah. Those who have been resourced tend to adopt a notion that says, I am self-sufficient. I do not need God. Do not tell me about heaven. Look at the heaven that I have. But one who is what one may refer to as a socio-economic underclass person, they have a hankering, they have a yearning for greater things, for a better tomorrow. And so if Christianity can provide a better tomorrow, they embrace it. And so what we have seen is that there has been a number of people from the other unions of this division cascading down to this union. And the minute they land in this union, they also adopt, unfortunately, the material complacency that all of us are enslaved by. And so you then have a disconnect. You have a gap between a person and God on the basis of material possession. And so it does have an effect.
I love that comparison, but at the same time, I had the privilege of being in Turkey before we go through chapter by chapter. And it's the rich people that have built beautiful mosques. It's the rich people that close their businesses at a particular time and rush to the mosque. They literally believe that without their God, who is Allah, their business cannot be a success. Why can't we have that here? Now, another comparison is that I've got a friend who came here from Lagos. He's been here for about 7 years, but he tells me a time when he was very broke. He's a property mogul now. But he came here very broke, and he phoned his mother, said, "Mom, I'm broke. Why don't you send me some money?" And the mother said, "How stupid you are. Every Nigerian is opening a church there, they are thriving. You can't ask for pocket money from me. Now talk to me." Why is advertising not thriving when other people, the Bushiris, the Moros, they are thriving? What is the problem?
Well, again, we have almost an allergy as Adventists to the gospel of success. I will not refer to it as prosperity, but success. We are very averse to successful people. When you become successful within the context of Adventism, we begin to look at you differently. We might actually even call for a lifestyle audit. Now, that, in my view, is denying God the power to bless His people. We should begin to allow God to bless the church. We should embrace it. And if people are blessed, we should not look at them aversely. When they are blessed, we should actually say, if God could bless him, there's hope for me too. In North America, the African American community there, Dr. Calvin Rock and others have a program. It started as a small little project. This is the Reach Out program that they have. Their logo is of a man climbing a ladder, and he's right at the top, but he's reaching out to the one at the bottom, and he's pulling the one at the bottom. This is what, in my view, success means. Success means when you realize the space that you occupy has been blessed by God. Reach out to others. And folks, there is no dignity in poverty. There is no dignity in poverty. Now, Evangelist Zuki is going to speak on one particular chapter here. I think it's chapter 9, where I speak of institutional homelessness. The black church has almost destined itself to poverty. We believe we must sleep on desks in schools during camp meetings. When minority members, I'm from KwaZulu-Natal, and so we refer to others as minorities. I know the TSC has a problem with that, but you better refer to the brethren as minorities. They don't believe in that. Camp meeting time, let's go to a chalet, let's go to a hotel. But the black church believes the poorer you are, the closer you are to God. And so we need to change that paradigm. That paradigm has to change. And I'm happy that our conference evangelist, Pastor Mapanga, is here. Because we need to say, as a black church, does the tent still work? What kind of people are we attracting in tents? What kind of social economic class are we attracting in a tent? At the end of the tent, when we collapse the tent, how many qualitative Christians do we retain? And so these are the issues around success and prosperity. And so I think the church needs to say, when you have been blessed with material resources, dispense of them. And those that are around you who may not have reached where you are. By the way, we are not all going to reach where you are. But we should be saying, God bless us. Don't look adversely. Poverty is a pejorative, it's a negative. Poverty is a curse. And so we need to open ourselves up. You mentioned Bushiri and others. We should open ourselves up because I believe God has a blessing for these churches for us. Amen.
I think my church will die if a pastor did what Bushiri did the other day. He bought a Maserati for 3.6 million for the 6-year-old daughter. That's a blessing, eh? That's a blessing. Now, I normally say, someone asked me, what's the difference between Dorcas and women's ministries? I said Dorcas, they are those old ladies who sleep in schools, and women's ministries are those young ladies who sleep in hotels. That was my definition. I would like to see a ministry in the church that says, we're going to the Hilton Hotel. Not because Maboma Shaila talks, but we just want to attract the governor of the Reserve Bank, the minister of finance, let him know about Adventism. But we normally find it easy to go to Polar Park, Ivory Park, all the parks that are there. We are there. Now, you mentioned Pastor Mapanga, and I saw the wife jump. The wife is an evangelist at the Hilton Hotel. The husband is an evangelist at Polar Park. This is what you could see that. Now, let's get into your book. The first 5 chapters. Adventist mission in transit. Why in transit? Re-evangelizing of South Africa. Why are we re-evangelizing? Did we do it a good way the first time we began? The forgotten cradle of Adventism in Africa. Brand marketing and church growth. That doesn't sound like church. Brand marketing. Church growth, yes, but brand marketing. What brand? What brand? You call Adventism a brand? Adventist brand ambassadorship. Talk to us.
Thank you. I'll summarize the first 3 chapters. The first chapter speaks to a reality that saddens me and other church heritage historians, and that is the fact that Adventism landed on the South African shore but did not settle. It landed but did not settle. We refer to it as Adventist mission in transit. Adventism did not come to South Africa in 1887 to settle. It came but was in transit. Those that hosted Adventism when it arrived here felt they were enough. They did not need to be evangelized. These were the Dutch people. Peter Wessels and his family, Van Druten, and the other people felt we cannot be a context of mission. Only black people are a context of mission, not us. And so Adventism came, but did not settle here. Others were sent by the London Missionary Society, Scotland. Others came from the United States, of other faith organizations other than the Adventist Church. Those came to settle. Hardly a year in South Africa, Robert Moffat could speak the Setswana language fluently. He helped through an interpreter to translate the Bible into the Setswana language and went not in Cape Town, and not to Kimberley where there was diamonds, but chose to what is referred to today as the Northern Cape, Kuruman, and set up a mission station there, and incarnated himself into the community, spoke the language, translated the Bible, and so he settled. But our people did not settle. They came, they were received. Ellen White wrote them a letter and said, use the resources that God has given to you through the Wessels family to print Dutch literature into native languages. But the brethren refused. We will not use money, the money of Dutch Adventists, to print literature into local languages of indigenous people. And so in 1892, they were already talking about moving into the interior. And questions were asked. Why don't you set up the first mission school in South Africa? They said, well, we've just set up Claremont Union, which today is called Nhlapho College, 1892. But they said, that is not a mission school. That is a school for European children. And so mission was never for South Africa. 2 years later, they then moved, met in a little place called Vryburg, and met there and put together an ox wagon to take a 6-week trek into Matabeleland to set up the first mission station on the African continent. Now, the question is, were there no black people that needed to be evangelized, to receive Adventism? They were there. They were there. But the mission was not for them. And so it is a mission in transit. It moved. It skipped everyone and went into southern Rhodesia. And there are reasons we may not go into those for now. And so chapter 2 speaks to the need to re-evangelize South Africa. Yeah. The foundations were faulty. Yeah. The foundations, the entry point of Adventism in this country was wrong. And so the Christians who adopted Adventism had a serious fundamental flaw in them, in that they accepted two things. They accepted the Dutch brand of Adventism, but also accepted the culture of the brethren that came. When the other missionaries that I mentioned were beginning to sing indigenous songs, we kept to singing songs exactly like Europeans do. Archbishop Tutu, who is quoted in the book, says Christianity came to create a confused Christian. And so the African Christian is a confused Christian, because you have had to give up indigenous values of worship. Chapter 1 speaks to that. It says, it speaks to a pre-missionary era in Africa, because they came quite late. It is first those that came with a pair of scissors to divide the continent. Then they opened doors for missionaries to come. But when missionaries came, they found an African brand version of African religion. But they brought a new religiosity, which Tutu refers to as a confused one. He says we sing their songs. What happened to our songs? That is why it is difficult today to stand in an Adventist church and to clap hands and to sway ever so gently at a song. You can't do that. You can't do that. Now, it is not a contemporary problem. It is not a postmodern problem. It is the problem that started in 1887. When the brethren came, we adopted their brand of Christianity, but also their culture. Chapter 3 speaks to the forgotten cradle of Adventism. When the brethren arrived on the shores, they arrived in Cape Town. When they arrived, it was because they had been asked to come. A check of £250 had been sent by the generous Vessels family. Now the Vessels are from Kimberley, we'll come to that. They sent a check of £250. And when the money arrived, incidentally, it arrived during the General Conference session. And the telegram was read, and the telegram said, send us ministers to Africa. And the telegram was read to all the delegates. And everyone stood up and sang, to God be the glory. There was a check of 250 attached to the telegram. And so the General Conference released the 4 families to come to Africa. They arrived in Cape Town. When they arrived, the brethren said, we don't have presence here. We're from Kimberley. Now the DBA family, who were the farmers next door to the Peter Vessels, the Vessels family, Johann Vessels, the father of Philip and the famed, or should I say the notorious Peter Vessels. They received the people, and they all got on the ox wagons and traveled the almost 900 kilometers to Kimberley from Cape Town. That's where they set up the first mission station. And so Kimberley then became the cradle of Adventism. That's where Adventism was born. That's where they built the first church in Kimberley, the first Adventist church in the entire continent. And so, but with passage of time, they realized that we cannot stay in Kimberley. We have to go to Cape Town. Now the reason for them to leave Kimberley were 2 reasons. One, the diamonds that had been found on Father Johann Vessel's farm. That farm had been sold. Who bought the farm? The farm was bought by another Adventist family, which was a neighbor, the DBA family. They're the ones that bought the farm of Peter Vessels. Well, Peter Vessels obviously is the son that is much known. He is known because he sent money to build Avondale College. He sent money to build Battle Creek College, which is Andrews today. They funded those, but could not fund the mission school in South Africa itself. The farm had been sold, so the DBA family bought the farm. After a while, a consortium, which was led by the DBA family, decided that all the small business, all those that were prospectors in mining, should be bought out. They were all bought out, and then the DBA family took over the diamond family, the diamond industry. And so they had no farm anymore, so they moved down to Cape Town to set up what is called the SAN, the sanitarium there, and other institutions. And Kimberley died a slow death. They wanted to build a Battle Creek. In other words, to build an Adventist village in Kimberley. When that failed, they then moved everything to Cape Town. They wanted to build a Kurambone. Kurambone is the Adventist village in Newcastle. Not our Newcastle here, Brother Mahlangu. Newcastle in New South Wales in Australia, where we have our school, Avondale College. That entire area is Adventist, banks, the airstrip, everything. They wanted to set up the same thing in Cape Town. And Kimberley, the cradle of Adventism, died, was forgotten. And in closing, the chapter speaks of the current membership of Kimberley. Now we had to source information from the white, the colored, and the black African in Kimberley. The total membership of Adventists is 550. the whole city of Kimberley. 550 people. And so the church is hemorrhaging, is imploding. The church is dying there. But that's where activities began. The good thing, though, is that much as we have only 550 members, Kimberley, even though it is forgotten, Kimberley has given birth to 3 divisions in Africa. With a collective membership of over 11 million. And so it is our SID here, it is the ECD in the East, and of course the West Africa Division. All those owe their existence to that small little place called Kimberley. And so yes, even though it is forgotten by church historians, the division has never been there. They have no idea where Kimberley is, which is sad in my view. Because as evangelists will say, Evangelist Zuki, they just came back now from meetings in Battle Creek, where Adventism began in North America. We have not been able to acknowledge our own Battle Creek, which is Kimberley. We failed to do so. Instead, we'll go to Irene, St. George Hotel. We'll go to Bedford. And the chapter 9 that he's going to speak on speaks of institutional homelessness. We are an institutionally homeless church. We take God's money and we plant the money in secular institutions. We even use the ATKV. I see some of you have read the book. ATKV. Until 1994, black people could not use ATKV. ATKV was built by the cultural wing of the Broederbond. And that's where our money goes. We go there, and that's where we spend our money. And to me, it's a shame to that Baptist church.
It's getting more interesting. And I'm sure those of us that are sitting here can do something about it. We love St. George's. We love that church. We are slaves to these places. It's like this branding, Pastor. When tomorrow I can come up with van whatever and tell an Adventist to do away with Louis Vuitton and do away with Prada and do away with Nike and they would kill me. They would rather still buy, LV. Makes sense, eh? There's this one, Dolce and that's only Gucci. Ask them, man. Those things make sense to us. How do we change that? I see here you've got the brand marketing. I'm interested to know the failed organizing business session, race relations and church growth, up to maybe the demise of the Indian field. I see you are right in Natal now. Somebody told me you are doing very well with the Chatsworth Church. Talk to us.
One of the reasons why the church is not growing in South Africa is because people have what I refer to as a speculative identity of who we are. They speculate. They're not sure. Are we a cult? Are we a Christian movement? So we have a speculative identity. And that's not good for church growth. What we are saying here is that we need to rebrand ourselves. The church needs to market itself more than it is doing at the moment. We are a closet ecclesia. We are people that are hidden. We are a church in hiding. We are like a church in Eastern Europe, an underground church. People don't know us. We are nowhere to be seen. And one of the reasons is because we lost entities that were, in my view, good marketing entities. There are programs that we have collapsed. This church has collapsed very worthy programs because we are heaven bound. The chapter speaks to schools that we collapsed. These schools were not closed by government. These schools were closed by a collaboration of white church leadership and white government, pre-democracy in this country. And so they closed the number of schools that we had. Some of these schools, I have no time to refer to them, there are more than 15, just in this part of the country, the northern part of the country. We lost them. We lost a hospital, the first black hospital, Nhlapho Hospital in Sophia Town down the road from here. It closed, it opened in 1936, like Shiloh Mission out in Mashashani in Petersburg. Most of them started in 1936. 1959 it closed down. But who closed it? The workers there wrote to Father Trevor Harrison. They skipped some of the Adventist pastors and wrote to an Anglican pastor who is an activist and complained about work conditions in an Adventist institution. The brethren realized, 1959, Pastor Staples was president in Nhlapho Day. They realized the place cannot be sustainable because people have become radicalized. Workers in Adventist institutions have become radicalized. And so, Nhlapho, when they closed down the area and moved people to Soweto, had to be sacrificed. Anglicans stood and said, "You are not touching our churches." But the white leadership in the Adventist church were only willing. And so we lost the hospital. It was demolished. And it was just one of the many institutions. Our schools in other places. And so what we are saying is this. We need to, or perhaps before I get to this last point, we also lost, when we talk about brand ambassadorship, we talk about two things. We talk about institutions, but we're talking personalities. And so we're talking about institutions that should actually stand as and play an ambassador role. People must know the church through those institutions. 1956, we lost what we used to call True Foods. It was a big health food manufacturing company which was serving the whole country, which was serving then Southern Rhodesia, which was serving Australia. It interfaced what it was doing with the health work that was happening in Australia. And the office or the factory was in Heidelberg, where you have Mills on Wheels building today, just next to Slade, the white building before you get to Slade. We had a big factory there. Everyone in the country knew this church through our work, through the work. We collapsed that one as well. It closed down. And so in terms of institutions, we closed institutions. We lost ambassadorship. People. There are people that went through schools, Adventist churches, Tuli Matonzela, the advocate being one of them, and many others. It is this church, again, that failed. We made them. They grew up in the pews of the church. But we failed to acknowledge them. On the contrary, when someone like Julie said, "I want to be a lawyer," it is an Adventist pastor who said, "You can't be a lawyer. Lawyers, you can't be a lawyer and a Christian at the same time." And so she decided And the rest, of course, of her career is history. And so we need to rebrand the church. We need to reintroduce ourselves to the world for the world to know us.
I would like to just let's deal with what we can do. We have a way of blaming apartheid and blaming whoever for our sins. But Bethel was not closed because of apartheid. I remember talking to Dr. Lubisi. I remember talking to Pastor Wakaba, sitting down with Pastor Wakaba to say, whatever you do, don't close Bethel. If you move everything, that was my dream. If you move everything from Bethel, leave theology there so that it becomes a school of the prophets. That's what we wanted. And we said, you cannot build Andrews, which is Helderberg, and kill Oakwood. That was but that fell on deaf ears. So it was our own people who did damage to our own selves. So we can't blame them on our back.
Well, we have the president of the Bethel alumni here, and he's going to share a few words with us on that particular chapter. All I just wish to say is that Bethel was killed by apartheid. Bethel was killed by whiteness. There are two in the book, amongst others. I'll just refer just to the two that were killed by white Adventist administration. The one is Bethel. We know in 1991 the unions merged, and we praise God for that, because then it collapsed the previously racially configured unions, and we had one Southern Africa Union conference since 1991. But with the emergence of this new union, we unfortunately had to sacrifice a lot of our own indigenous things. Some have refused to die. They were stubborn, like Stasa. Stasa refused to die. But we lost two things with the coming together of the unions. One, we lost Bethel College. Because the brethren said we cannot have two colleges under the union. We cannot have Helderberg College in Somerset West and Bethel College in Butler. One of the two has to be sacrificed. I will not mention the names. Why did it have to be us? And so let me just hold it there for a second. The one other thing that brethren had to choose between the two is what the book refers to, the last chapters, as what was then called harvest in gathering appeal. Yes. And on the other side, love in action. These two were, yes, correct. Yes, these programs were registered with social development, both of them were registered. But when the unions came together, the church had to make a choice. Which one do we keep? Which one must die? 1991, Bethel had to die. Bethel had to go. The two programs, in spite of the wealth of ideas on what should happen to revive that institution, it had to close. The level of consultation was very thin and very scanty. The black constituency was not consulted. The program had to close. Many had just had to hear that the school had to close. Love in action had to die. And so the registration of love in action had to be collapsed so that we retained Harvest and Gathering Appeal, HIA. Harvest and Gathering Appeal, which was a wide program, gave birth in 2000 to what is called ADRA. And a couple of years later, 7 years later, ADRA gave birth to what we call Meals on Wheels Community Services, MOCs. And all of these evolved to where they are. But black work had to die. Now, Love in Action, under Love in Action, the auxiliary program of Love in Action was Dorcas. And so, there's only one conference in the whole union which to date is keeping Dorcas. And they are very stubborn about it. It is the TOC. When the unions met in the Cape Conference, the three entities came together to give birth to what is called Cape Conference. They lost Dorcas. And all others, KwaZulu-Natal, where I am, we lost Dorcas. And others as well. And so there are a lot of indigenous home-brewed programs that we had to sacrifice. And so much as we commend the founding fathers of our church democracy for giving us this union, we are lamenting the death of our own institutions.
I won't get you into politics. I want real things today. I want us to come out of here and say, this is what we're going to deliver. I was just coming from a Dorcas meeting at the old tabernacle in Soweto when I came down. And they sent their greetings, they are happy with what we're doing. I announced there that Pastor Nhlapho is launching today. I'm passionate about Bethel. I never went to Bethel. But my grandfather went to Spiencop. After that, went to Bethel and taught there. My father was born there. And every time people, like in high places in government, say, I went through Bethel, I went through an Adventist institution, why don't you invite me for the alumni? One of them is Max Sisulu. One of them is Mandi Simpasha, who was a minister of DTI and then an ambassador to Russia. He's now in Mozambique. I still keep in touch with them, a lot of them. And they say, when are you inviting us? And we have no answers to such questions. Is it too late that we can redeem ourselves? Is it too late that we can come up of something? We cannot be apologetic about black institutions. There is no one who will tell me that a black institution is racism or whatever it is. Can't we pick up ourselves? Is there something that can be done as you go to Chapter 10, which is neutrality of Adventist intellectualism?
The Bethel College file is closed. The brethren have closed the file. Nhlapho College is struggling to just to have 450 students. In the past 10 years, Nhlapho College has experienced a positive, enrollment, if you please, to 430 once in the last 10 years. It's a top-heavy institution, but client services, the client is the student, they are not doing well there. And so they are asking for more appropriations from the union. And the union is not coming to the party. The union has no intention whatsoever to revive Bethel College. It is not on the table. It is not on the agenda. It is not this leadership in the union that will revive the agenda of Bethel College. And so your question then is there hope? Is it too late? First, we also need to look at Bethel as a historic reality. Bethel is a child of, or it comes from Maranatha mission in Grahamstown. It comes from there When the white kids were sent to Ladysmith, to Spionkop, when they found the farm there, 1990, they were there until 1928. When they left Spionkop, going back to the Cape, for they had found a new place at the foot of the mountain, Helderberg Mountain. The school, Maranatha, had closed, and the few black students that were there were then sent all the way to Ladysmith to take over the classrooms that were vacated by white students. They could never be together. And so what was called Spionkop Training College, suddenly in 1928, when the black students moved in there, your grandfather being one of them, Absalom Nkosi, the father to Tula Nkosi, Richard Nhlapho, the pastor evangelist, and many others. When they moved in there in 1928, the name of the school changed from Spionkop Training College to Spionkop Missionary College. The curriculum had to change. Now they introduced home crafts and other things, sewing and knitting, and did away with chemistry and other things that the white kids were doing. In 1935, Spionkop closed down. The Utugela River ran right through the campus. We had, what a beautiful, beautiful place. We have been there, we've seen the foundations, and even Spionkop were saying, why can't we revive Spionkop? But coming back to Bethel College, the students were sent from here, and at this stage we want to acknowledge the work of Evangelist Sean, a white brother, and the work of Pastor Richard Moko. For together, they went around looking for a site. In the alumni, when you recognize in the honor roll of people who made a huge difference in the existence of Bethel College, you need to mention Richard Moko. Because the movement of students into Bethel College, he died in 1933. And so 2 years later, when they moved into what we refer to today as Bethel College, his dream had been realized. It struggled from then on until 1991. Bethel has never been a resource institution. All the resources, even of the Trans-Africa Division, were not coming to Bethel College. We had a staff that could teach. We have letters of black teachers that wanted to teach there because the white teachers that were there were underqualified. But because of blackness, they could not do it. But it's not Bethel only. The Indian work. Yes. We dedicated the entire chapter 8, to the demise of the Indian faith. Allow me, my dear brother and program director, to speak to that as well, so that we realize that there was an anti-black agenda from the union office in Bloemfontein. And it was not just a practice, it was policy. People actually voted that black people will be discriminated in the church. It was not a mistake, it was not by default, it was not a question of people going to the TRC as they went to apologize for practice and refuse to apologize for policy. It was practice that was informed by policies that were voted in the boardroom, that the black church must be disenfranchised. It was not by default. And so, the brethren, we lost our hospital, we lost the Indians who were Adventists, lost as well. They lost. They had a beautiful clinic, in Port Shaston, which was serving not only Adventists, it was serving the Muslim community in that entire area. They had schools. Right in Maranatha, there in Maranatha Church, they had schools in the basement. They had schools all over the place. They bought prime land on the Dolphin Coast. They bought them. They lost all those properties. The field, the Indian field, only survived for about 6-7 years. When the white brethren decided that we're going to close the Indian field. 1973, the Indian field collapsed. It closed. They took the membership of all the Indian church members, and instead of annexing that membership to the Natal field, which was black, or to the Orange Natal Conference, which had offices in Pietermaritzburg, they decided to send the membership of Indian brothers to Cape Town, so that they become part of the Cape field. And that killed Indian work. They used to go to the office to access material. Now who's going to go all the way to Elsie's River in Cape Town? And so Indian work suffered, Indian work died. We have collated the statistics. In preparing this text, we had to call people like my brother, Graham Mesher, who is here in the nation. We had to do research with people like Andrew Munsani in Devon. They are all acknowledged and credited in the book, in the footnote, because they gave the stats, they gave the information. And we have discovered that the total membership of Indian members, after losing all their schools and losing everything that they had, and losing the field office, is just 1,200. But we are also lamenting the fact that even today, with black leadership, Indians are excluded and marginalized. We do not have Indian representatives at the union. Since 1991, we have never had an Indian as an officer of the union. By officers, we're referring to the top three. We've never had, not because they're not there, but because we choose to ignore the fact that they're there. And so, we're talking black African, we're talking colored work, we're talking Indian work. There was an anti-black agenda in this country, that black work will not grow. And so the church is not growing. I will not talk too much about the race relations chapter, because I'll get emotional. I'll just get emotional. But all we will say is that we're not growing as a church because we have historical baggage. We need to exercise ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to detox ourselves of the ills of the past. We need to rebrand ourselves. Even Adventists don't know who we are. The 1991 union measure is a fluke. It's a farce. It's a mirage. It looks good at a distance. But if you get close to it, there is no measure throughout the union. Whether you go to the Cape Conference or you come to the KwaZulu-Natal Free State Conference, or you come to the TOC and the Northern Conference, whichever way you look, the church is not one in this country. How, therefore, can we experience church growth that Zimbabwe and Zambia is experiencing when we are a divided church? No one followed up the 1991 measure. The union leadership failed to carry a giant conference mandate. The mandate was combine the two unions into one. Immediately you do that, facilitate the merging of other entities. They have not done that until today. That is why in the Cape Conference, when you have a big meeting at Mossel Bay, and by the way, that Mossel Bay is an 80 kV former Bruder Bond institution. When they meet there, because they've got AWM or they've got Adventist Band, it's all back in a mesh conference. When we go to Anani in Port Shepstone, in the conference where I come from, and we fill up that hall, we are in mesh conference. We're the first ones to mesh in 1994. You know, the JAG conference was so impressed that KwaZulu-Natal has meshed, that they donated the building that is used as the conference office. We didn't pay a cent. Everything was paid for by the JAG conference. Over and above the building they bought 5 houses around Pine Towns because they were excited in the measure. But the question is, are we measured? When we fill up the annual hall, who is in there? And so the black church is beginning to relook itself. And I hear young people from our universities here talking about decolonizing Adventists. I hear all these conversations. But we need to go back. It can't start here. We need to go to the foundation. And so it was a short question, but long answer. Basically what we're saying is, hope will always be there. Not in an administrative, air-conditioned office in Bloemfontein. Hope must come from the ground. Hope must be from the people that will revive Bethel College, the people that will revive the Indian field, are what I refer to as the pew members, the rank and file, the grassroots, and not people in some air-conditioned office.
Wow. I'm glad there's still hope. I think it needs to come from the grassroots. You don't have to be fired to start something. It seems like as blacks we wait for too long. When you are fired from the ANC, then you start economic freedom fighters. You can start Adventist freedom fighters before you get fired. You need to assert ourselves. There is nothing evil we're doing by that. We just proper identity of who we are in Christ, not in somebody else. But still having our place as black people who have accepted Adventism. We need to assert ourselves. Now, for this, I know Paul is going to deal with the institutional homelessness. You haven't dealt with the neutrality of Adventist intellectualism. I want you, don't spend much time on conversion to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission because you are going to be emotional. Urban Challenge and Church Growth, I'm interested in that. Adventist and Interfaith Movement, can we talk about that?
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. Neutrality of Adventism, of Adventist intellectualism. What we are arguing in that chapter is that there was a time when we had what I call a death of Adventist intellectualism, a lack of it, silence. When this country called for black intellectuals to rise, particularly those who are clergy, particularly those who are lay people, to speak against the ills of not only what was happening outside of the church, but inside the church. Adventist intellectuals conveniently chose to be silent. Many went into school, they went overseas to do graduate work, which is good, but it only benefited themselves and their very, very narrow circle of friends and family. And the church at large and the nation did not benefit. And so many were neutral. Many did not know whether they should speak up or shut up. And many chose to shut up. But we lost a lot of members. From Bethel College, we had a lot of young people that went into exile. And I chose not to spend too much time. I only pick up just one. Just the other day I had a WhatsApp message from Gift to Telesi, who sent a message even now before we started. And he wanted to know when is the church going to acknowledge people like Umzala and Omar. Now I said, well, he's in the book already. You know what I'm talking about. Brethren, from KwaZulu-Natal know what I'm talking about. Umzala, and I'm not going to bore you with details, I'm illustrating the fact that Adventist intellectuals, many chose to be quiet when others spoke up. But others chose to be neutral. Now, neutrality is a dangerous thing. Because neutrality tends to gravitate towards the status quo. Students were dismissed, expelled from Bethel College by white leadership. They were expelled. Yes. And a lot of intellectuals kept quiet and were neutral. They were saying, well, that's wrong. But they were not doing anything about it. Umzala was expelled 1972 from Bethel College. He was a brilliant young man. He was a teenager. He was intellectual. He was active in the church life. He would sing, he would do Sabbath school. We mentioned some of the things there. Data collected around the Mzala narrative was gotten from people like Golomfega, who was in class with him, people like his elder sister, Pasha, and so on. And we are eternally grateful to them. We acknowledge them there. But he was expelled. When he left, he went back home, even though born in Dundee, but grew up in Elosberg, Egoti. He went back home as an expelled Adventist. It broke his parents, more especially when they heard why he was expelled. As a young student, of the other things he questioned was the disparity between salaries of white staff members and black staff members. He took that up as a teenager. They are doing the same thing. And some of the black ones are more qualified. Why are they paid less? He was expelled for that. He left, he went to finish his matric, then he went to Ongoye. Mzala is the one who recruited Blade Zimani. Blade was Blade. Just Blade. Until he met Umzala Noma. Now he's called Umzala because he called everyone Umzala. And so the name stuck. Otherwise his name is Uchanda. Noble. Noma. We lost the young man. He left, he went to Ongoye, he studied, and then he skipped the country. He went into Mozambique, where he was received by one fellow called Jacob Gedekisa. He received him and gave him the orientation that all those were coming in received. They soon realized this young man was different. He had to be different. He came from Bethel College. He came from Sigmund and all those guys. So he had to be different. They had to move him. From there he went into Zambia, where he met a young lady there. Her father is Jonas Bambo. He married her, and she got baptized, the daughter to Jonas Bambo. And the leadership of the SACP realized there's something in this young man. And they sent him to what was then called Czechoslovakia, it's Czech Republic today, where he met up with people like, some of you will know Dr. Nhlapho. Dr. Nhlapho, who was a medical student in the Czech Republic then. And so they met up there. But there was something in this man. 1988, he wrote a book that put him into trouble. He was already in trouble with the system. Yeah. Like all exiles, he was a persona non grata. He wrote a book. The title of the book was Gaja Utelezi, The Prince with a Double Agenda. Now you go and Google the book. Now this is the book that was interdicted by the Inkatha Freedom Party. They said, this book cannot be sold because of what Umzala wrote about the chief back then. It's Prince today. And so the book, up to today, cannot even be quoted. You can't quote it. Sure. Umzala left the Czech Republic, was sent to London to set up work there. He's a Marxist. He went to set up work in the area. He got sick. He was pursuing his PhD there at the London Open University. He got sick, and so family went up. Sis Pasha went up, and others went up because the man was sick. And he died. He died. He died. He was poisoned. See, now here are the comrades. You see, some things we don't say here, we are being mainstream, we are being streamed to the whole world. We lost him, but he asked before he died, this Marxist Adventist, expelled from Bethel College. He says, sing Adventist hymns around the bed. They sang the songs. He says, there is a man, Unyamos, Mteto, Engoj. I'm owing him money, which I took when I was young before I left. It was a small, negligible amount. He says, please, go and give that man his money. His sister cannot remember how much it was. Probably less than 10 rand. Back then. The family came back after he died and looked for this man to give him his money. And so he died just a few years before this country was moved into a new dispensation. So we're saying in the book, had Bethel not fired this man, he would still be alive. No. Yeah. If that be true, my question is, who killed himself?
We may never know unless they went to the Truth and Reconciliation session.
But in summary, the reluctant pulpit. Are we looking forward to a more aggressive pulpit?
Sir, we're calling for a proactive pulpit.
Yes, sir.
We're calling for a functional pulpit. Perhaps the next book is the dysfunctional pulpit.
All right.
We're calling for functionality. The Adventist pulpit has become very dysfunctional. The Adventist pulpit has become socially irrelevant. Not only back in the day, but even in peacetime, we are still socio-politically irrelevant, completely irrelevant. We are asking the pulpit to be, number one, to be proactive, to take up issues. There is an anti-woman agenda that has bedeviled the church. We are a church that has issues against women. and we don't apologize for that.
Come on.
We have African brothers who are captured by North American Division money. Completely captured by North American Division money. And as such are not able to use the pulpit to call out the shame that we are beginning to see. So, just before the last chapter, the reluctant pulpit, there is separatism. I'm sure those who have bought the book have seen the chapter on separatism. The church is busy fragmenting itself. Fragmenting itself. As we have seen, for instance, in the Transworld Conference. Now that, in my view, again, is not by default. That the Adventist pulpit is a divided pulpit. We are beginning to have people who are doing strange things, separating themselves from the mainstream church. And worship within a context of misguided rightness. Yes. They are willing to go to court to prove rightness. I separated myself from you because I am right. And I will prove by taking God's money and give it to a secular court to prove rightness. Now what we are saying in that chapter is that perhaps you don't need a secular court to prove rightness.
Yes, sir.
Because the Adventist church has got policy and has got the Bible.
Yes, sir.
That's all we need to prove rightness. The day you go to court and take us to court to prove rightness, is when you are actually proving wrongness. So separateness has compromised church growth in this country. We are not going to grow when we still have notions of grandeur, as some of us unfortunately are. So we are calling for a united pulpit, a pulpit that engages, not a pulpit that is reluctant to tell the truth. Somebody has to stand and tell the General Conference that the vote you took recently against women, we know what it is about. Women cannot be ordained in this church. Women cannot stand and teach and preach. Women cannot go to Heidelberg to take up theology. The SID document says women who are studying theology must be advised to pursue a different route. Those are the kind words that are given. And so the Adventist pulpit is very patriarchal. It's a male pulpit. And therefore, we are not going to grow. This church will not grow to the extent that God desires for it to grow. Because we're an issue-laden church. Our plate is full. We need to empty ourselves. I believe, in closing, that God wants to bless this church. I believe God is aggrieved by the irrelevance of this church. It hurts God that we are so irrelevant. What do we do now? What do we hope the book to achieve? Well, each chapter has recommendations.
All right.
Someone says some of them are radical. Well, that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. We are hoping that someone will embrace some of the recommendations and help to create a new church.
All right.
And so we need to see a new remnant. A new remnant, a new Seventh-day Adventist church. That's what we want to see. A church that is expressive, a pulpit that is expressive, a pulpit that liberates, a pulpit that includes rather than excludes, a pulpit that is inclusive, a pulpit that gives the freedom of homiletical discourse to women, a pulpit that says, sisters, take your rightful place. We sent you to exile for too long. We need a pulpit that will speak. A pulpit that will say culture is subservient to the mission of God. We cannot put culture over here and mission here. No Jew, no Gentile, no male, no female. We are all one. May the pulpit refuse to be reluctant from now on. May the pulpit be allowed to speak. May the pulpit refuse to be mediocre. May young preachers emerge and change their script and begin to speak to the issues and stop entertaining people in the churches, so that the pulpit becomes a hive of evangelism. We have two international evangelists in this room right now. Elder Ashuru, Elder Zuki. These men speak in strange places. Countries that some of us have never been heard about. And this is what we want to see. Those who have been captured by tradition in this church, perhaps they need to appear because the church has been captured. We need to decolonize ourselves. We need to Africanize. We need to indigenize. But beyond everything, and we don't use African intellectualism for it, we use the Bible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
A Bible-based church. And may God bless you as we allow God to unleash the potential that the Adventist pulpit has. God bless you.
I still call him the best secretary ever at TLC. But today I found the best lecturer.
Yes, sir.
And my dream must be, don't open a shop selling Maguinya, please. We've got too many of us. You'd rather open a university where Pastor Nhlapho can be the first chancellor. That should be your dream. Nobody's Mickey Mouse, IT here, drawing things that we don't understand. Systems, what systems that don't break? Yeah. That was lovely. Pastor, may God bless you.
Amen.
Well, put this, smile. Elizabeth, smile. Yeah. Ikomo gababe nyama shabete kwaimani baba. Ayiqali lapho le ngoma. Ayiqali lapho le ngoma. Iqala ngasemarabini. Emarabini sayibamba. Emarabini sayibamba. Members, you are all disfellowship. Evangelist Nkoli, over to you. Talk to us.
My name Zuki Emmanuel Antonga Nkoli. You can call me Zuki. Amen. Yes, I really am so thankful to Mfundisi for the opportunity to speak and share in the grand work that he has done together with men. I really thank you for what you have done. I want to start on the first book just as a prelude to the second one, because the way I am dressed today, which is the way I dress every day, talks to the first book. The first book, they did not mention, I know the program director will mention it, Tears of the Black Pulpit. Yes. This book talks mostly about the identity crisis that we are facing as the black people. I have this statement that says you will be best at what you do when you are true to who you are. Yes. As long as you are not sure who you are, you will never excel at anything that you're trying to do. First, be true to who you are. Find who you are. Are you black, white? Are you aspiring to be white while being black and trying to do black things? This book talks to that and many of the things that Mfundisi has mentioned. And that talks mainly about how the white missionaries who came to our land as much as they had a good agenda, they missed the scripture where Paul says, to the Jew, I become a Jew.
Yeah.
You see, when they came here, they, instead of saying, I have found a black people and so I will become black like them so that I can, by some chance, save some of them, they said, no, you need to change and be like me so that we can be saved. And so for a larger part, we have been dealing with this as the black people of the identity crisis. It's so bad that we aspire to be white. And that's the danger. But I don't want to talk more about that. I want to talk about the part where the white man, for me, I think the white man has done what he can do and what he's best at doing. I really want to talk about what the black person can do and what he should be doing. Excelling rather than fighting what we call the enemy. We should not necessarily be angry at the enemy because we are the children of God and God has said, love your enemy. And so we should love them, but excel at who we are. And for me, this is what I do. And so the first I have done, and my family has called it the midlife crisis of being black. So my midlife crisis is to be black. And so I do this all the time. But today I'm wearing some black stuff, Xhosa stuff, and also this shirt. I wore it by choice. Can anyone recognize this shirt? This is a Filipino shirt. They call it the barong. And I've learned a lot. I've worked a lot in the Philippines, and what I learned from them is that they refuse. They have been colonized by many countries. Spanish, the Chinese, the white, they've taken over. They did exactly what has been done here in Africa. But the Filipinos refused with some of their identity. And so when you go to the Philippines, I don't care where you come from, you will go with your suit and tie. Even the president of the General Conference, when he gets to the Philippines, the first thing they do to you, they did this to me. I went to the Philippines with my big tie and suit and everything ready to preach for 2 weeks. The first thing they do, they take you to the shops. You go buying barongs. I have 7 of these because they say for you to reach our people, you are to identify with them. And I so wish, I pray, if there is my program director, a radical pulpit, it is that one that says, it's enough. We refuse now to be colonized anymore. We are going to do what we ought to do, what God created us to do. The chapter I am to deal with today is very passionate in my heart. It's very close to my heart. And you know what it's called? He has said it. Say it again.
Homelessness.
Institutional homelessness. And the homelessness part of it has come from us. Theologians, they do what is called exegesis of a text. And the text says we have no abiding city here. That's the text. Now, instead of them saying we will be looking forward to heaven but be relevant to earth, they said we have no abiding city here. We should not therefore have nothing on this earth and only look towards heaven. Unfortunately, the people who preach this to us have institutions. They have property. But they said to us, you don't need to have property, you are going to heaven. Why should you have property? And if you remember where the whole story of property came from in the Bible, it started with the first sanctuary that was built. The first sanctuary that is built is very interesting to me because the sanctuary is built by Egyptians, Israelites who were captured in Egypt. And on their way to Canaan land, they are promised, you have no abiding city here. You are to go to a land flowing with milk and honey. This is the promise They were never told that along the way you will build churches. But God says to them, I want to take you to that land. And as he walks to them, right in the middle of the desert, he says, you know what? For you to reach that land, you've got to build a sanctuary. You have to build a house of God. God needs to be clear. His presence. Now the Bible says, the chapter talks about this. I'm summarizing that chapter. This is Exodus 25, verse 8, that the chapter talks about. Where God says, let them build me a what? A sanctuary, and I will what? Now this is the word that we have lost. The word dwell in the Hebrew is shakan. Shakan means to be a permanent resident of a society. God says, I don't want to be a visitor. I want to reside with you permanently. Build me a sanctuary, and I will dwell with you. Do you know that in the Bible, of all the things, the commands of God, only these two, maybe three of them have a promise like this. One, build me a sanctuary, the promise, I will dwell with you. The second one, bring your tithes and offerings, the promise, I will shower you with blessings so that you will have no room to store. The third one, you read the book of Revelation and you will be blessed just by reading the book. Now, there's very few, because God is God. God says, do this, and we ought to do it because we're just people of God. He does not need to promise us something for us to do it. But when it comes to institutions, God makes a promise. He says, you know what, if you build these institutions, if you build sanctuaries, if you build, I will dwell with you. You will see the presence of God. Now, the book starts by the excuse of everyone when it comes to, not everyone, maybe us black people, when it comes to building churches. What is the biggest excuse? I can ask you now. Let's build. What will the people say? We don't have money.
So exactly I do.
That's where it starts, please. And so, it has, you know, I love God because he says you must worship me in spirit and in truth. Yes. So the book starts by challenging you on the spiritual side of things. The spiritual side of things is that if God asked the Israelites, which is what the book talks about in Exodus 25, verse 8, Israelites who were slaves, Israelites who have just come out of captivity, and he says to them, build me a sanctuary. Where were they to get the money from? They were not working. They had more excuses they could give than you and me today. We have just come out of slavery. If anything, the little we have is at least to sustain us. And God says, take that which you have. And you know, it becomes so demanding. If you read that book of Exodus, how that sanctuary was to be built. With gold, with linen, with silver, with fine leather. Not these zinc things that we say, this is it, this is it. God says, for my institutions, you do the best for God. Now what is he saying to them? Because they're saying, no. The money that we have is gone, we can't finish it on this. And God says, finish it there and totally depend on me. This is what we're missing as the black church. We're missing God's providence because we're saying to God, no, what I have, I need to provide for myself. And God says, your cup is too full. I can't bless you. Your cup is too empty. Your cup. Build my institution. Use the best for God's houses. Use the last. Now in Corinthians, you will get the church in Corinth where Paul says, these guys, they have given everything that they have. This is chapter 8. And then they gave that which they did not have. They gave more than they had. Please, when you get home, I don't have the time now to be preaching about this. Read this chapter. They gave something that they do not even have. So there is no excuse. I ask God, what does it mean to give that which you don't have? And he answered me. He says, go and look at that lady. You remember the lady who prayed in the temple courts, and the priest said, you are drunk? Remember that lady? The lady says to God, God, if you give me this child, I give him back to you. This is somebody saying, I am giving to God that which I don't have. Yeah. You are pledging something you don't even have. Yeah. You are saying, God, as soon as the child comes, I'm giving it back to you. Yeah. That is what the people in Corinth says. So, black people, we have no excuse. Yeah. I have just opened now a church in Namibia. You don't know the story of that church. You know, when you drive in Namibia, when you drive in the outskirts, not Vendu, this is not Vendu, this is right in Katima. When you drive in Namibia and you see the church we have built and you see the place where these people who contributed, the two don't make sense. Our ministry we built at 50%, so the other 50% needed to come from them. But their 50% does not make sense. And you know what they did? When they did not have money, they went and sold the cows. The cows, they went on auction and sold them and built the church. They have one of the most beautiful churches in the world. What can come out of Nazareth? That has always been there. People will say, what can come out of you, black people? It's time that you show everyone that you are made in the image of God. So there is no excuse in terms of money. Money is not a problem. Sit nicely. You seem like you want to stay. No. Sit there. Sit there. You're about to finish. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get you to sit back. That's still the first paragraph. The paragraph on money. I want to say to you, take care of God's business and God will take care of your business. Give your all. You see, God does not want just a little bit of it. He wants your all. Of course, then the chapter goes on to talks about, I want to do this because if I go on my emotion, I won't finish. So let me just do this part. So it talks about the money. I want to come to this thing. This borrowed facilities, lack of facilities. And then the other chapter, the other subheading there says, and I'm going to close on this, borrowed facilities, lack of facilities, and homelessness by choice.
By choice.
My dear friends, this one is very close to my heart because I think the white man Mfundisi has done so much damage that now he's able to sit back and watch us do damage to each other. The homelessness by choice is really by our choice now. Of course, we can blame the history and all of that, but right now, it is because of us. It is us destroying each other. We are not building, not because of anybody else, but because of us. And I've tasted this. And I don't stand here to talk about me, but to elevate the book so that you can buy the book and read it to elevate God. Because I've seen that to try and defend myself is a futile exercise. You will never finish. Jesus, after he rises from the dead, instead of going back to Jerusalem, which is something I would have done, and prove that I am alive, he goes a different direction. He doesn't go back to try and prove. So I'm not here to try and prove anything, but I've seen how bad and how really tasteless it is to have your own people fight you for what you are doing. Pastor Nhlapho, we went together with him. There are some recommendations in the book where one of them, he talks about how the church should partner with lay members to make sure the work moves. And the General Conference has got this, calling it total member involvement. Now, the total member involvement that we practice here in our region is nothing close to what total member involvement is supposed to be. Total member involvement says, come with your skill. I am a pastor. We are going to build a church. I know nothing about architecture. I know nothing about construction. So come with your skill and advise me. But what we say, what the church here says, is total member involvement. We want all of you to preach. Here are some sermons. Take these sermons, you can read them, and you can go and preach. That's not what God wants. No, God wants us to use our skills and our resources for His kingdom. And for us to be able to build these institutions, we need to use the skills and the resources. We have done, now I'm closing now. Now you can sit like that. You can even stand right here next to me on recommendations. My biggest problem here is that you have leaders in our church who are there for 3 years, maybe 5 years, and you have the lay member whose dream it is to build this institution to the extent that he's going to retire here. But the partner that he must partner with, the pastor now, is only in this presidency for 3 years. And so there is a disconnect, because I want to build an institution that will last till Jesus comes. You want to make sure that during your presidency, your name, you have achieved A, B, C, D, and F. Such that when the president changes, and I can cite many examples here, when the president changes, not only does the next president, not only does he not continue with what that one started, but he makes it a point that he destroys it. And so this disconnect is what we are praying for in this radical pulpit. Now I love, Pastor closed with this statement of how our leaders are captured by North American Division money. I have sat in North American Division year-end meetings and their media meetings. I am invited there and not invited here at home. Right here at home, they hate my name. Everywhere else, they love my name for the things I've done here at home. I have not done anything in America. I've done them here. But of course, which prophet has ever been honored in his own home? Of course, that does not say you must make this prophecy come through. But for me, this is the biggest problem, where we, as our leaders here, will compromise everything for the sake of their relations and self-preservation in the positions where they are in. And I'm saying to us as lay people, instead of fighting and begging and killing our leaders, let us do our part. Let's just take our part. So that's what I do. I just take my part. I have gone to the conference and presented a program. They refused it. I went to the union, presented a program. They refused. I went to the division, presented a program. They refused it. I went straight to Elder Ted Wilson, and I presented the program. And today, at the general conference, there is a department called Development and Construction Consulting Services. That was started by me. I served 2 years in that department. And the leaders from my country went up to Elder Wilson and said, this man does not deserve to be here. I went and built a building in Helderberg College. Helderberg College. This is one white institution where all the buildings are named after the pioneers who built them and donated them. So there are white names. But in Helderberg College, there is one building called Zuki But you may not even know this, because the leaders will gather there and praise everything else and not recognize this one. So for me, my biggest issue is, if we are to change our pulpits, my leader, if we are to become radical, if our pulpit needs to be non-reluctant, it is for us to partner, to see the value in ourselves, and stop doing good outside there and not being recognized back here. I have come back here now. This is my last day. And I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you with this, because this we are starting right here. Pastor in the book has talked about the institutions that have closed: schools, hospitals, clinics, everything you can talk about. Right now we are working with a church, small church, that you may have heard of, called Metro Mission Church. We are going to build the state-of-the-art nursery school, elementary school, high school, university, clinic, right here in Centre. We want to change and evangelize the Centre area, what is called Africa's richest mine. But the only way we can reach them is through centers of influence. Not through a church, but through a center of influence. A center of influence asks the question, what do these people need? And you provide the answer to that. And then bid them follow Christ.